Hello, my name is Matthias Cavodi. I'd like to welcome guys to my channel. Today we're going to talk about Linkin Park, a band that I'm not a hardcore fan of, but I do like. I think a couple of their albums are really, really awesome. And also, they're a band that wasn't afraid of experimenting with their sound, changing directions. Sometimes that worked, other times it didn't. They had a very important impact on pop music in general in the early 2000s. We're going to get into this ranking, my personal top 10 favorite Linkin Park albums. And the first one is actually Minutes to Midnight, a album that I remember when it came out. I heard it for the first time, and it had left me scratching my head. I didn't understand what they were going for. A lot of bands during this time, which is 2012, they're trying to move away from the nu metal sound. For example, not only Linkin Park, Inquist, I remember during this time, was also trying to move away. And POD. Those are the two first bands that come to mind. Also Head P. That's another pretty obscure band that I remember trying to change things up. So Linkin Park start working with Rick Rubin, one of my favorite producers. And they put out this album, which for me, it sounds terrible. I don't like the mix. There's not much bottom end to it. Like the bass, you can barely hear it during the album. Mr. Han, the dude on the turntables and sampling, he's sort of like missing in action. Like he's in the album, but he's like sort of buried, or he does are very subtle. Another thing that you can immediately notice is Mike Shinoda. At least his vocal work and rapping is not very present on this album. And the odd thing is that when he does appear, the album just elevates with energy. It sounds really awesome. So it's sort of like a really weird creative decision to leave him out most of this album. Is all over the place. Like he plays rhythm guitar, piano. He's also working on the string arrangements. The guitar, like I'm seeing his credits right here, like he's all over the place, but it's really weird to see that lack of his rapping on this album. So it's an album, at least from an artistic standpoint, very focused on Chester, and I feel like it really falls flat. So let's go to number 9. I actually put a really weird, it's actually not an album, it's an EP called Collision Course. Collaboration with Linkin Park and Jay-Z, and it's an interesting novelty. I sort of got introduced to Jay-Z thanks to this extended play, and he's an interesting rapper. Like I sort of grew out of rap in the 90s. A few rap artists that I find really interesting or innovative. There are a lot. There are a couple of them out there that every time they put out something, they call my attention. But just in general, especially during this time, we're talking about 2004, I wasn't, my interest in rap was just really low. But I like this collaboration, even though it's pretty obvious that it's just basically a cut and paste of Jay-Z's material and Linkin Park's stuff. I'm not sure if they recorded anything new for this particular collaboration. It just feels like a product of Pro Tools. The songs themselves, they're pretty interesting. They're a lot of fun. They're a unique take on the Linkin Park and Jay-Z material. So that's all I can say about this particular album. EP. See here in the credits that Mike Shinoda, he's very prominent in all the credits, like in production and arrangements and on most of this project. So let's go to number 8. We have Living Things. This particular album is much in the line of what they were doing on A Thousand Suns, but much more focused. More songs in general on this album. There's better material in general. It's very electronic heavy. And also the band sort of is lost. Like there's a lot of keyboard sampling, programming, but bass, drums, and guitars are in the mix, especially like the drums. There's a lot of drum machines on this. Guitars have a very heavy production on them, and they're worked quite a bit. So, aside of that, this album has a couple of really solid pop songs. In general, it's a good listen. Like from front to back, I find this album pretty enjoyable. Again, the band is sort of like lost in the mix. So at number seven, I put Road to a Revolution live at Milton Keynes. And it's very odd that Linkin Park has a ton of live albums. And in general, like the material of their live stuff, it does sound a little bit more energetic. It sounds a little bit more raw, more unfiltered in general. But outside of that, they don't do too much to the songs. Like they don't rework them. As musicians, like I hope any Linkin Park fan that listens to this doesn't get angry. Like they're not the most accomplished musicians out there. They know how to write really good songs. The instrumentation is they do basically what is needed for the songs, and that's it. I do have to say is Chester Bennington's vocals and his singing. You can really appreciate him. Like in live, he nails all the hard stuff. He's a very impressive singer. If I remember correctly, there's also a couple of live tracks with Jay-Z on it where they just don't work. They really fall flat. But the rest, pretty good. It does sound competent live band. I would have loved to see these guys back in their heyday live. So we're gonna go to number six, which is One More Light. It's their final album. It came out in 2017. And boy, this was like, it was a surprise because we're coming off after The Hunting Party, which was like their first overtly super heavy album that I really like. So I was really interested to see where they were going from there. And they put out this album, which it's straight up pop rock, electronic pop, very little influence from rock, and it's like sort of the first time I feel like Linkin Park's sort of chasing the trends of what was hip in music during that moment. Like again, here we have another situation where the band, the drums, guitar, and bass. I always forget to mention their names. Drums, we have Rob Burden, guitar Brad Delson, and on bass Phoenix Farrell, Dave Phoenix Farrell. They're pretty much lost on this album. It's all driven by drum machines, keyboards, samples. What I do like about this album, it's sort of tragic because the lyrics on this album are sort of, you can see sort of Chester Bennington's mindset and where he was at the time, and you can tell this like he wasn't in an okay place. It's sort of heartbreaking to hear this album, and at moments it does feel like a cry for help. So a live album that came right after this one, so I lopped both of these together. It's sort of interesting. These songs do work a little bit better live. They one just it does feel really tragic and it's sort of sad, even though it's very upbeat and it's very pop oriented. Number five, I put Meteora, which it's sort of I can draw sort of parallelisms to Meteora to Korn's second album. Did it big with their first album, and they rush out a second one. It's a pretty short album, but the material is really solid. Like it's good from front to back. Sort of the unfiltered aggression that you got on hybrid theory. It's not here. It's more streamlined. It's more polished, but also the songwriting is better. On the song "Faint," where you have that break where Chester screams, it's a fucking. I remember hearing that for the first time and going, "Oh shit, that's awesome." Or there's a like more hip hop rap oriented song with Mike Shinoda that also I love the samples on the back. Mr. Han is just killing it. Pretty impressive to see a band on their second album being super consistent. They do play it safe. Yes, there's stuff that they're catering to record company, like they need their singles, but the material in general, it's really good. Then we have at number four, A Thousand Suns, which, as I said before, relative to Living Things, this album, it's very electronic heavy. There's a lot of samples, keys, very heavy on production. Like, who's the producer on this? Look, what a surprise! Rick Rubin's the producer on this one, and so again, the basic band is sort of lost. It's buried. You can hear them; they're still present, but in general, their output, they're trying to be creative as hell. They're exploring new sounds. One of the things that really sort of irritates me about this album, it's one of the few albums I ever heard that has two introductions to it, and like if you cut out all the introductions and the interludes, like there's not too many songs on it, but the songs are really good. And they took a real risk doing this album, like coming off the previous albums, Minutes to Midnight. It's a total change of direction. The song "The Catalyst" is it's monumental. I think that particular track gets stuck in your head in a good way, and I just love the melody on that song and the sing along chorus to it. It's fantastic. So let's go to number three. We have the Hunting Party. We're coming off Living Things. It's an interesting experiment, and this one is freaking heavy. Like all of a sudden, the bass band. Okay, Rob Burden on the drums. You hear him use double kick drums on this. Like you can hear he's a really awesome drummer. They let this dude loose. It's like, hello, I've been here all along. Brad Delson on lead guitar. He gets to play guitar solos. He does some pretty interesting guitar work. On the bass, he never does anything. He's probably one of the most uninteresting bass players out there. But this album really caught me by surprise. It was a very pleasant surprise. And here we have a band that's reinvigorated. They're hungry. We have Darian Malakian from System of a Down and Scars on Broadway on one track, and like when he starts playing, you immediately notice like that's Darian, and that's a System of a Down sound. And also, oddly, also we have Tom Morello, X Rage, and Audio Slave on one track, but his guitar playing it's sort of it's he melds quite a bit with the band, so it's not so apparent. But Darian's guitar playing does. Pretty risky move because I imagine all the young kids coming off Living Things listening to this, I feel like they maybe have had ostracized some of their fans while gaining others. So going after this one, you have One More Light. That was freaking jarring from one album to another. But it's very similar to another parallelism with Korn. They during this time also were always changing their sound, trying new stuff, and it's pretty jarring for a fan. Like you have to be pretty open minded, because again, I feel like bands that know how to write good songs and have a lot of ideas but are not the best musicians. This is sort of a common thing you're going to see for them. These changes of direction are very abrupt. But boy, Hunting Party, if you haven't heard this one, it's really worth the listen. So let's go to number two. We have Hybrid Theory. I remember the first time I heard this album, where I was. A friend of mine came to my house, brought this album. He was into super heavy stuff, a lot heavier than the stuff that I was listening during that time. And he gave me Hybrid Theory. Said, "Hey, listen to this. You might like it." And I was really impressed. Album's lightning in a bottle. Like some sick riffs, some killer grooves. The rapping, Shinoda's rapping is just really on point. Chester Bennington's vocals and melodies. Also, you have Crawling, which is a massive track that came off that. One Step Closer, also an awesome break in the middle of the song where you have Chester screaming. Chester, as a heavy singer, man, his screams and yells, he's freaking impressive. Opening track, Paper Cut, that's a really weird track, really interesting song. In the end, man, like every one of these songs are pure gold on it. It's like very few bands that can make albums that are so freaking solid from front to back. Like almost every single song off this album, you can put it out as a single, and it's just gonna kill it. And the mix to it, it's really heavy. It's really I put this album on every couple, at least one, because I listened to an album once and I stopped. I won't listen to them for a real long time. from front to back. But this one, like many of the Incubus albums, like I'll put a Hybrid Theory on once every 1 or 2 months. Number one, it's very odd because I actually chose the Recharge album, the remix album of Hybrid Theory. Recharge is also a good remix album, but I'm not going to put it so high. Reanimation, because it's the first remix album that I ever heard from a band that they reimagine the songs, they rework them, and they do an awesome job. And it's very hip hop and rap oriented. Fantastic how some of the reimaginings. The here we get that intro to crawling with the string arrangement and stuff like that. That later on would be so emblematic with the song. You have Jonathan Davis from Korn on one track. You have the singer from Stain, even the dude from Taproot. Who remembers that band? Fascinating to hear a band reimagine their songs in such a profound way, and they really do kill a job. There's, I think, 1 or 2 new tracks on this album too, so it's really worth a listen. And again, it's a real oddity to have such a good remix album. So I'm gonna leave this video here. I hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time. Bye.